Okay, you can see I have the set screws back in place. The top set screw is an Allen wrench, and the bottom part of the screw is a socket. I am using a 9mm socket to tighten those back up. Now, obviously this is still a little loose, but we left it that way so we can do our measurement. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a yardstick, or in this case I have a piece of metal to do our measurement with. And how we're going to measure is right about the 2-inch mark. Okay? And that's about right. Now, you're going to want to make sure that measurement's correct throughout the process. Just to be on the safe side, you don't want to damage your trigger. Now I'm tightening these back up just a little bit, and then I'm going to put the level on it just to make sure we're good. And first I'm going to set the level in. That's good. I think the table might be a little crooked. And this is the one that I want to check before I do that last tightening. There we go. So now we have a good level. Not trusting my eyeball because I would have been wrong. I'm going to put that last tighten on that screw. Now keep in mind, everything that you're doing, if you find you've done something wrong throughout the process, you can always go back in and start again. It's a pretty simple process. Now, what I also recommend is using a small dab of alcohol to clean your surfaces. You've had your greasy fingers, you may or may not have cleaned the drum with a wax or oiled hardware, something that you're going to end up leaving a residue on your. So you're going to just wipe a little bit of the alcohol just where you're going to place your triggers. Now, I know from where I set this drum up that my rim trigger is going to mount off this screw right here. So I'm also going to wipe it a little prematurely, because I'm going to end up wiping that again before I actually stick that, because I'm going to be working with this center trigger primarily. But that's where my rim trigger is going to go, is off this lug. You want to put your rim triggers, and this is something that's part of your measurement process. When the drums are set up, you want to, how you always set them up, which is completely depends on where you're mounting hardware and how your drums face you. So your rim trigger is always going to want to be in what they call the lower right hand quadrant, or where you find yourself hitting that rim, right? So in this case, it is obviously it's going to be the lower left hand quadrant of the drum, because that, I know where this mounting hardware is, and where this lug sits, I know where I hit that drum. And that's something that you can always check and see. Again, you can put this drum back on your hardware and try it again. So first what we're going to do is we're going to pull out our 1/4 inch female, okay, and remove the back and the washer. and we're going to feed it through that vent hole. Now with this drum, because this is a thicker drum, I know this is a tight fit. So I actually will thread this in. That's how tight that vent hole is to that piece there. Now you do-it-yourselfers out there, obviously, if you run across any of the problems, you might have to widen that hole or whatever. But this is a 1986 again Tama, and it's an older drum set, so things were done a little different. Now at this point, what I do, I put these back on first, and I'm not going to snug the thin nut here. I'm not going to snug it. I'm actually just going to finger tighten it up against. I'm not going to put the wrench on it yet. Because something that's very important to me, and something that should be important to you during this process, is cable management. You don't want to crimp cables, you don't want to bend them too harshly, and you definitely don't want to do that at their connecting points. Okay? So at this point we're kind of looking at where we're gonna mount things and how we like things to be mounted. So I'm gonna start with the head trigger, okay? And where I want that wire to come back, where it's not crimping here. You're not damaging the solder, you're not crimping this wire, you're not bending it, you're making it a nice easy flow. You will appreciate that at a later date. What I like to do with this one here is I like to run it, and Pintec also recommends, just for neatness sake, running it inside your bridge or on top of your bridge, depending on how you've mounted your bridge. This one I like as well, and when you give your measurements to Pintec, they're very good about giving you extra cable. So you're going to be fine. Just take the measurements according to what you need, which you're going to end up measuring from the vent hole to the nearest lug, which in this case is about a 4-inch spot, and then they cut it a little bit extra, just to make sure you're okay. All right, so I've already decided I like that running off the side there. So I'm going to peel the dot on the back, being very careful with the piezo. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Peeling that dot, and then getting a nice even center placement. Now, these set screws you want to make sure are out of the way. You don't want this metal touching the sides or touching the set screws at all. You'll notice it sits on that piece of tape, which is nice and cushy. It's actually geared to size, so you get the best response out of the trigger possible. So that is already the size that you want it. Just keep it from touching any other metal, and you'll keep the machine gunning, from happening. So that's a decent placement for me. I usually center that up with these other two lugs, just kind of going straight across, making sure that I'm center. And I like that. So you don't have to do anything. They recommend do not touching the piezo. You're good at that point. Your next one is your rim trigger. Okay, and you're going to remove the lug screw. At that point, okay, and you're going to do the same thing. Now, you're going to notice I'm not going to pull that sticky off there yet, okay? I'm just going to make sure I like it. I'm actually also going to wipe a little bit more alcohol into that spot, letting that dry. And a lot of what I'm doing here, and the way I'm doing it, is really for cable management, as well as, of course, this is where I'm going to hit the drum. So, and you'll see that tape that was provided with the bridge, you'll see where we place that tape will also keep things from crimping up as well. So I'm going to add that back in. And I'm not going to quite, I'm just going to hand snug it till I get it where I want it. And that's about good. This way I can run my cable management. I can either do, down the side of the bridge or over the bridge, and then, run the rim side of this stereo input, someplace nice and neat. You're also going to notice that these are labeled. This one is labeled rim, and this one is labeled head. Now, if you touch those, if you got something on your hand, you may or may not rub that off, those letters off of there. Don't worry. Rim is a 3-letter word. Head is a 4-letter word. Just remember that there's 4 letters, and it usually goes around. The H will be on one side. So you'll always know which one's which. You can always, at a later date as well, tape. A lot of guys will tape, as they tape their 1/4 inch as well, but they'll tape these too, and just keeping everything nice and neat as well. But Pintec Drums does a really nice job of letting you know which ones go to which piezo. Okay, we're just going to let that hang for now. Alright. And then we're going to go to this piece. Okay, this is the fuzzy piece that sits on top, and will get squashed just a little bit. That's why this top part is softer than the bottom part. The bottom part is less forgiving, and you get 2 of those just in case you damage one, or you need to add a piece to this one to get it up to the right height. For whatever reason, you've got an extra one. Each drum comes with an extra one, so you'll have. I have an entire bag of leftover parts that I can use down the road, and these are all dual zone setups, all excluding the bass drum, which we'll get into as well. So the first thing we'll do is we'll peel this piece of tape. Okay. Same little rubber stuff that was in between the bridge, the bridge pieces here, and that will sit right on top of the piezo. Okay, nice and center. You want to make sure that that's sitting squarely on top of that trigger. You don't have to push down real hard. That sticky will do all that work for you when you put it down. So now what we want to do is we want to take our measurement from the top. Now what Pintec recommends is 1/8 of an inch. Okay, it's about a little bit more than 1/8. Now I can drop that down just a little bit, and that'll bring that whole bridge assembly down, bringing this level to the piece. I recommend not using a piece of metal like this. I recommend using, you want it thin so you can get an accurate measurement from it, which is why I chose this piece. But usually what you end up having to do when it's a bigger drum is what happens is you get a little sag. So you want something that's stiff all the way across, so you're getting a nice accurate measurement. When I tighten this up properly, that's 1/8 of an inch from where the head's going to sit on it to the actual foam. So now what I'll do is I'll actually test this drum. I'll actually plug in all the pieces before I do any taping, and before I remove any of this tape here, I actually test the sounds through my module to make sure that I'm getting an accurate response from the head trigger as well as the rim trigger. And that's going to depend, of course, on the module that you're using, and how you dial those in. That during this process sometimes it's actually tougher than the install itself. The install is very easy, as you can see, and they work great. Let me just test this drum, and I'll return and we'll finish this one off.